AEW Dynamite starts off with the Outrunners versus the Young Bucks in a quarterfinal match, in a tournament match to determine who will be the number one contender for the Hurt Syndicate at Forbidden Door. They put on a good match. The Young Bucks picked up the victory. After the match, though, you end up getting Okada. He comes out. They end up jumping the Outrunners. Then you end up getting Swerve Strickland. He comes out. And then he just slowly walks towards the ring. And then you get the Outrunners start making a comeback against the Young Bucks. Then you have Swerve taking down Okada, and then they stand tall, and that's really it. So this was just to, further the Young Bucks advancing in the tournament. It looks like most likely it's going to be FTR and the Young Bucks in the finals, which not really that excited about because that's like their fifth or sixth match that they had. Is like, can we please move on from just them two fighting each other? So we'll see how that match plays out in the finals. But I'm assuming most likely FTR will be the ones winning that whole entire tournament to further the story between Adam Copeland and Christian Cage, eventually probably teaming up down the line in the future against FTR. And you further the story with Swerve and Okada, even though there isn't much of a story here. I really don't care for the story because the story is very repetitive and it's not really much of a story. The story is literally Okada is frustrated and mad because Swerve Strickland and Will Ospreay took their EVP ship from beat the Young Bucks at All In for their EVP title. So if that's the reasoning for the story, is Okada going to go after Will Ospreay too, or is he only going to go after Swerve? Don't really know. Don't really care for the match. The match will probably be a banger, most likely, but the match itself, I couldn't care less, to be honest. We end up getting a quick segment with MJF. MJF is talking to Shelton Benjamin. He wants to, reunite the group. He's like he's pretending like everything is all fine and everything. Then you get Shelton, basically ends up telling him that he's out the group and that he needs to just stay away from them, or else they're gonna, of course, ended up, attacking him, of course. So it looks like he's completely out of the group, which I am a bit confused on because they did months. They did like a good 2 month build of this whole MGF joining the Hurt Syndicate, only for him to be in the group for like what, a month and a half or so, just for him to get kicked out like that. I understand what's the end goal here, because the end goal most likely is him costing them the tag team titles. It is that they gave us all this big build up just for him to get kicked out, very anticlimactic. So he doesn't have the Hurt Syndicate anymore. So we'll see when he will. I wouldn't call it a turn because I really don't see it as a turn, but we'll see when he does cost them those AEW tag titles. I Most likely it probably would be at Forbidden Door to have FCR hold those titles if they want to do Adam Copeland and Christian Cage going after the AEW tag titles against FTR. That's what it seems like that's going to be the most likely outcome. So that might be where they end up pulling the trigger, him at Forbidden Door, costing that Hurt Syndicate the tag titles. The only question is how they're going to do that while he's also chasing after Hangman. Don't know if they're going to do a thing where he's juggling multiple storylines, which they could easily do. But that's the interesting question. Would that eventually put Bobby Lashley in the main event scene? Because if MJF goes after Hangman while he also is fighting Bobby, that could easily shift Bobby away from the tag division and put him in the main event scene. So we'll see how this plays out. It is a bit interesting. It is a bit anticlimactic how he got kicked out, but it does leave a lot of questions in a good way. So I didn't mind this at all. I enjoyed this segment. We end up getting a Christian Cage promo. He ends up mentioning Revolution. He ends up mentioning why he cashed in and why he didn't stick to the original plan. He ends up saying that he didn't trust the three of them to execute the plan perfectly. So he ends up going on his own. Then he ends up mentioning Adam Copeland, ends up mentioning that how Adam Copeland told him to find himself and that he's not sure if he ended up finding himself, but he ends up saying that he knows who he is, he knows the type of person he is, and he's continuing to be that person. He ends up saying that Adam Copeland shouldn't act all high and mighty because he should understand Christian's perspective because he used to be a certain way and he done things that are not seen as good to reach a certain level, which is true. The promo ends. He ends up running off. You end up getting Mama Wayne comes out. She tries to slap him, but he stops her. Then you end up getting Kip Sapien. He ends up trying to sneak attack Christian from behind, but Christian solves it. Then you get Nick Wayne attacks him with his Ring of Honor championship. And then that's really it. So they're continuing the story of Nick Wayne, of course, and Christian Cage, that storyline. I'm interested to see how this plays out. Nick Wayne actually got some heel reaction, which was good. Hopefully this elevates him, gets him some more heel heat. which is very funny because Christian should not be the babyface in this situation, but that was always how it was going to play out due to just Christian just being the way more over person. Plus, with Christian being a legend and him most likely on his way out within the next few years, fans don't want to boo him. And plus, fans like Christian Cage as a heel. He gets booed, but he typically only gets booed when he's forcing it, not naturally. So I like what they're doing here. This was a cool segment. I like what they're doing here. I'm just interested to see how they're going to pair Christian and Adam Copeland, because I do like that Christian isn't a completely different character. I like that he's basically the same character. He's just going after Nick Wayne, who betrayed him. So I do like that, because I'm glad that they didn't just completely make him a complete good guy. That would have been completely dumb. So I like that they're still keeping his character the same. He's just going after Nick Wayne now. So very interested to see how this plays out. Now we end up getting Hangman versus Jon Moxley for the AEW World Championship. This match, exactly what I thought it was going to be. They said it was going to be no interferences, but of course, when both companies do this, whenever they say it's going to be a no interference, when you have a faction that is known for interferences, it's going to be interference. Of course, interferences happen. It was a moment where Moxley was about to win, but Hangman kicked out after getting hit with the championship. But Hangman ends up retaining his AEW World Championship, so that's a good thing. Don't really know why we needed this match. This match actually makes zero sense because they just had a Texas Death Match at All In. But this match, you made it a regular match, which should have been the opposite. The regular match should have happened at All In, and this should have been a Texas Death Match. That would have made more sense. This should have had some type of stipulation. That was kind of backwards in my opinion. And also, why wasn't this the main event? That makes no sense, especially due to what we end up getting in the main event. I don't understand why this wasn't the main event. This was easily the most important thing on the show. So I don't understand why this wasn't the main event. That was a bit confusing. But overall, Hangman wins. Hopefully this is the end of this Death Rider storyline. We don't need to see Moxley at all. If you are going to put him on TV, even though he shouldn't be on TV, but if you are going to put him on TV, have him do something else. Do not go after Hangman. It was already dumb enough that this was a rematch because there was no reason for Hangman to have to prove himself to Moxley, who he already beat. And then Moxley coming up with the dumbest reasoning is that he's not a real champion because he got to prove it again. Like, no, he already beat you at All In. He's the champion. Move on. So hopefully this is the end. We don't see these two fight for a long time, and this Death Riders thing is over. We get a tag match between Athena, Billy Starks versus Toni Storm and Alex Sensor. I think that's her name. I'm pronouncing her last name wrong. But Will Ospreay's wife. I'm just going to call her Will Ospreay's wife, or I'm just going to call her Alex. This was a fine match. Athena ended up pinning Toni Storm, which I really enjoyed. I'm glad that they had Athena build Toni Storm because we need to build this rivalry, okay? Because this rivalry is boring. It's boring. It still is boring. But it does make it a bit more interesting that Athena pinned Toni Storm, makes her not look like a complete moron, makes her look somewhat competent, especially when you have the Ring of Honor Women's Champion for about, 3 years now? She should look very dominant. She should not look like a complete moron, even if it is against Toni Storm. So I like this. Hopefully they continue to build this momentum. We'll see where this plays out. I'm still keeping my expectations low because Tony Khan hasn't proved to me that he's willing to build other women outside of Toni Storm and Mercedes. So we'll see how this story plays out. But this is giving me a glimmer of hope, but I'm keeping my expectations low. Now we get the main event. We end up getting Ricochet versus Mark Briscoe. Mark Briscoe picks the victory. After the match, you end up getting Mark Briscoe cutting a promo, basically wanting revenge on MJF for constantly mentioning his brother. MJF pops out on Titantron, ends up saying that Mark Briscoe is a waste of his time and that he's irrelevant and that he's not going to try to get a match with him, but he's going to get a match with him next week only due to a segment with Hangman. Ends up mentioning that because MJF wants, of course, the AEW World Title. He wants a title match without costing his briefcase, but Hangman ends up saying that MJF has to earn his title shot, and someone who has earned a title shot and that he respects is Mark Briscoe, which makes zero sense at all because Mark Briscoe is a loser. I don't know what Mark Briscoe has done to be ahead of the curve against MJF, because that's what Hangman said. Hangman said that Mark Briscoe is ahead of him in the hierarchy for the AEW World Championship, which makes zero sense. But I get why they did it. I understand why AEW did it, but the logic makes no sense. But so MJF ends up saying that next week he's going to face Mark Briscoe. He ends up pretending like he was going to come out to the ring, but he ends up going from behind, attacking Mark Briscoe. Then you end up getting Hangman comes out, and ends up basically, I wouldn't say make the save because it's a moment where he ends up attacking MJF, I think Mark Briscoe was about to put him in a J driver, but then MJF runs off and ends up escaping. So that's how we end the show. Look, I get why they're doing this. It does make the MJF Mark Briscoe feud more entertaining and has some type of value. Just the logic behind it made no sense. But we're getting it next week, which I'm assuming MJF has to win, or if he does lose, it's going to be some type of shenanigans. He shouldn't lose cleanly to Mark Briscoe. It has to be something that makes him lose. But if he does win, I think he should win. But we'll see how this story plays out. Overall, this show was all right. This is very similar to NXT. It was better than Raw. Very similar to NXT, where the show wasn't the most entertaining, but there were small things that makes me somewhat intrigued for next week. So they did a good job there. But overall, it was a okay show, but it was better than last week. So they are making improvement. But you guys let me know your overall thoughts, opinions down below. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. But yeah, that's it.